Okay, so we are now recording. I don't know if anyone's been going back and watching any of the videos. If you were here, frankly, I don't think you have to unless you want to refer to something. Just as a reminder, when I am playing audio, as we did the diegetic, non-diegetic lecture, but especially now as we get into stuff that might be flagged as copyrights in the QLab lessons, be aware that occasionally YouTube does ding me, which is super annoying. And I'm like, I'm not stealing your work. I'm just trying to teach. But there is a possibility if you go back and look at these segments, either stuff will be trimmed out or things will be muted slightly. If that's the case, that's not an error. Just scrub through until the end of the piece of audio and you should be all set. Sorry, can everyone hear me with all the trucks out the window? It's okay. I don't know what's going on outside today. Okay, so speaking of a couple of other things to learn, you might have noticed, and let me screen share it. You might have noticed that up on Titanium yesterday, I put an optional project. This is for those of you who want to go a little bit further with QLab. This is an adaptation of what I would normally ask over the semester. I recognize that not everyone has the tools at home to do it. If you are Mac-based, you can do this one easily. If you are PC-based, it's going to be trickier. If you are PC-based, you want to borrow a computer to do this project, you want to contact the library. They have a computer loaner system. They do computers and like modems, routers that you can borrow from the school. So if you are interested in that, that is how I would suggest you get a hold of a Mac to work this project. The bulk of your projects in this class are designed to take you no more than mostly 2 hours. This one, depending on how you approach it, 2 to 3. So it would be fairly quick if you did it on your own. I'm putting this out there optionally. I think some of you are very interested in learning this software and going further with it. I think some of you are cool, right? It's like, I'll take my pass in this class and I'm never touching sound again. All right, that's fine. We don't see eye to eye on that, but I get it. So this is 100% optional. If you look on Titanium, the word optional shows up like 5 times. So please don't freak out when you see something and you think, oh my God, I don't have everything in. We're gonna look at that in a sec. This is purely, I would use the phrase for fun. For programming, I get not everyone uses the phrase for fun. This would be for your personal enrichment. So let's take a look at what I would ask you to do. So optional QLab project, you're going to take your 3 moments that you turned in for your other project. That was always designed that way. It was to take you from creative conceptualizing to forming your media to programming that media or content. So you've got the content already. It's what you built for your moments project. You can also go online, like you can use whatever you want in here, but it was initially designed as your moments. Musical underscoring, don't just use music. It's a boring choice, especially for this, like it won't give you a ton to program. Okay, what I would like to see is group cues, audio cues, fade cues. These should be really familiar to you because we spent about 2 weeks on them. Other things that I'm going to ask you to demonstrate are integrated fade cues. Don't worry, we're doing that today. A fade, not only a fade, but a fade and stop, which is critical. That's that little black on gray checkbox. Looping cues, sliced audio cues. These go hand in hand, right? You add a slice, you put in a loop. And there's lots of different ways to loop. Again, pretty much everything I'm asking you for here, you could approach totally differently. That'd be interesting. I could all give you the same exact 5 media files and say, program this for me. And I would get half a dozen different outcomes that would all function similarly. Again, in QLab, if you're thinking to yourself, gosh, there should really be a way to do it this way, there probably is. So that's why I'm giving you a lot of flexibility in this. I want to see how you would approach it. I'm going to close the Spotify window because it's blinking at me. Hang on. Okay. The pre or post wait times. We spent time talking about that in the last class. I prefer to work in green groups, which is a timeline mode group where everything fires at once, and then I pre-weight everything. If you choose to work in blue groups or an auto follow style group, you'll probably want to be working with pre and post weights. Again, that's your call and how you choose to do this. Okay, the final project must be saved as a bundled workspace. We're also covering that today. Upload it to Titanium. I put a Titanium Turnitin up. So yes, it's optional, but that's the easiest way to turn it into, like, just to get the file to me. So feel free to put it up on Titanium. The grade module for that is empty. So it's a I couldn't grade the project if I wanted. So this is pure, like, it goes on Titanium purely as an ease of you getting it to me. Okay. So Titanium does max us out at 100 megabytes, which for most faculty, I'm sure is way more than they need. But when we're working with audio, sometimes it's not. If your project is too big, you are welcome to Dropbox it to me, Google Drive it to me, do whatever. If you're going through Google, you might get a request from my personal email. So it might say Rebecca Kesson at Gmail is asking to share something. That's just me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hang on, I'm full of pollen. How's everyone's allergies doing right now?
I've mostly been staying inside, so it's been a fantastic allergy season.
Right. When I'm inside, it's fine. When it's nice out, I'm like, oh, look, my windows are open. Oh, I can't breathe. Cool. So, pardon if I'm sniffling and sneezing. Don't touch your eye. Okay. So yeah, however you choose to send this project to me. Any audio editing, this is kind of a holdover from the old project. Whatever editing you want to do on these audio cues, on the actual audio files, do it in whatever you can work in. If you've got GarageBand at home, awesome. There's a ton of free, if you look up online audio editors, there's tons of free ones. If you just want to use QLab as your editor, which is something we've been talking about, you can do that. So edit however you choose. You can add additional types of cues for extra fun. We're going to be talking about a few other styles today. If you want to add those in, if you feel passionate about working with start and stop cues and you want to dig deeper into that, go for it. For those of you that want to push further into this software, and I would recommend this even if we weren't remote, because I could do a whole term on QLab, and honestly, no, I could teach you the whole thing in a term, but like, there's a lot to do. We focus on a relatively small, very practical portion of it, but there's a lot more to it. Figure 53 has a ton of excellent video tutorials and links on their website. If you want to dig deeper into one of the facets that we haven't discussed in class, go for it. Put it in your project. Awesome. So once it's turned in, sorry, I have to move the screen. Okay, so here's where it gets weird. Once you've turned something in, I can't grade you on this. Again, this isn't about your grade. This is about you pushing further in some software and learning. Once you've turned it in, email me and we're gonna set up a time. And over Zoom, you and I will set up a small session and we'll step through your QLab cues together. It can be during my office hours. Certainly doesn't have to be. I'm home. I don't have a ton to do. So, I mean, we all have things to do, but like, I'm home, so we can take the time and work through this individually. Normally, I would give written feedback for QLab. I actually think this is better because we get to actually go through and be like, okay, great, this works, this works. Hey, that doesn't work the way you think it does. Why don't you approach it this way? So, if you choose to do this, once you've done that, we'll Zoom it. Yes, next week is our last week of classes, which is crazy. Don't worry about that deadline. Like, finish your classwork first, like your actual stuff that gets graded. Like I said, I'll be here for a while. If we want to spend the next month going over your Zoom stuff, that's fine by me. We have the time. I'd like you to, those of you who are interested in this, we get the opportunity to dig deep. So dig. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this screen share, and we're going to go back to QLab. Woohoo! Share. Yes. Okay, so we are going to be spending our last day with QLab today, and we are going to look, I don't want to give it away too much, so we're going to look at additional functionality. We're also going to look at how you turn this file over to somebody else. Okay, before we get going, I'm going to go ahead and build myself an audio cue, or actually, where's the Finder window for that? So I've got my Finder, you can't see it because it's not screen shared, but I've got my Finder window right next to QLab with my audio, so I'm dragging it in. Anyone notice anything different about the piece of audio that I just brought in? Anything look different to you?
There's more places it can go to.
Yes, good. Okay, so there's more audio faders. Just gonna move that, the squidge. Okay. So over here, what we were looking at prior to this was a master fader, which was analogous to the main fader on a console. And then we had outputs 1 and 2. That was the equivalent of 2 channels, or a left and a right. What I deliberately kept our lessons up until now on the free version of Figure 53, or of QLab. If you notice, are you seeing this installed licenses window or no? No, okay, never mind. So what I went ahead and did last night was activated a pro license for QLab. If you would like to work with a pro license for QLab, we talked about this already, but again, Figure 53 is giving them away to anyone who has an educational email address. So if you use your fullerton.edu email address, if you just Google Figure 53 educational license free or whatever, it'll come up. You just email them and say, hey, I'm a student, I want to work with this, and they will respond by saying, my response said, great, thanks, I put a free license in your account and it's good till June 1st. So if you want to start playing with this additional functionality, the opportunity is there if you have time. If you are feeling slammed on other coursework and you need other stuff to graduate this term, don't dig into this right this second. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm highly biased, but I think this is very interesting and fascinating stuff, and you could spend a lot of time on it. If you're really busy, start next week, right? Let the term get over and dig in deeper later. I'll still be here, we can talk about it. Okay, so what you are going to be seeing today is a lot of additional functionality, and I want to talk to you about what some of those things do. Before we do that, I'm going to make my QLab window a little bit bigger. I'm going to make my inspector a little bit different shaped. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is remember to set my correct output, which I routinely forget about. Thank you, Madison, for the nod. Okay, so it's going to Zoom, so you're going to hear this. Okay, I want to talk to you about cross points briefly. You actually would see cross points, which are these little black on gray windows down here. When we were, I almost held a piece of paper up to the screen to demonstrate to you. You can't see that. When we were working in our free license, you actually had these visible, but it was only for these 2 faders, right? Everything that's still grayed off here, you didn't have. But you still had your cross points. And I'm realizing to do this more effectively, let me grab another file real quick. Sorry, just need to, okay, what's something that's not 3 cowbells? All right, cowbells it is. Okay, sorry, dropping it into This class. Cool. All right, so you're going to see me run. Oh, I can't put that audio file in. It's fine. Ignore me. Okay. Cross points. When we were working in GarageBand and when we were working in Pro Tools, you were able to identify a mono versus a stereo file, right? Okay. So how, and I'll clean my desk and I put all my pens away. So let's talk about how you might ID a mono versus a stereo file. So let's say you are working in Pro Tools or the DAW of your choice, and you import an audio file and it looks like that. Are we gonna guess mono or stereo?
Stereo?
Stereo, yeah, right? There's two tracks. And we learned that stereo doesn't just mean two. What does it mean?
Was it left and right?
Yes, good. Okay, so when we're dealing with a stereo track, we're dealing with a left and a right. This is how we have developed technology to engineer our music and our audio, because we've got a pair of left and right transducers. Now, you will probably have also come across, and I put it in the test audio file for class, I believe. What if you just had this? What do you think that might be? I know it's not super well drawn. Right, Madison says mono, correct. So it's mono, single file. And so the verbiage is pretty obvious, right? Mono versus stereo, one versus, stereo left and right. So we know the concepts behind that. When you have a stereo audio file, when you take it, and the majority of what you have on your phone, or do we still have iPods? We don't have iPods, right? The majority of what you have on your phone or your computer are stereo files. If you have purchased a commercially produced audio track, it's going to be stereo, right? That's how the world works. Mono is a little more unusual. If you're running into mono audio, either you're dealing with some really old music. That's one way I run into mono a lot. Or when I'm working in sound effects in particular, very often those will be recorded and stored in mono. Another way to think about stereo, accessibility features use them too. Yes, really good point, Teresa. So when you're dealing with accessible audio, you want to make sure that both ears get everything, because you're dealing with people who might not have the same level of hearing in both ears. And so what accessibility features do is actually whatever is going to left versus right will kind of split and remerge them, so everything's going everywhere. Good point. The track that I just started playing with you, if you listen to that album, especially if you have headphones on, you can really notice, you can almost hear and feel the movement around your head based on where it is in the stereo file. Now, what all of this is coming back to is the fact that if you were to get in your car, I know we don't get in cars anymore, but pretend we did. If you were to get in your car, I feel like a dog who's like, do you want to go in the car? Yeah. If you were to get in the car and you're just like, phone, play me Fiona Apple, play this song. Obviously, I don't have a smart car either, so I'm not used to commanding these this way. You played it. Do you have to do any special settings? Like, do you have to tell your car, I want to hear this in this ear and this in that ear? No, right? You just, my car's old, so I pop in a CD, or you plug in your aux cable or your Bluetooth in. The file type is universally recognized. And what we're saying with stereo file types is I want this information to go here, and I want this information to go here. The file is more than just the content. the content is the music, the voice, the sound, whatever it is you're hearing. Not only, maybe it's a cat meowing. Let's say I, grabbed a microphone and went and harassed my cats, which I have tried before, and they do not perform on command when I needed meows for a show. I know they're jerks, but real cute though. If I go and record a cat running past me, oh, Teresa says food would work. I've actually never tried that, but I'm gonna. So if here's my little USB mic that I'm using for class. If I'm recording on this mic, oh look, I have a little paper with a dog on it. Let's say I'm recording this dog. If this dog, I know it's dumb, but it's actually useful. So if this little dog is walking past my microphone while I record it, and I go back and I listen to that stereo recording, what's it going to sound like? What am I going to perceive?
It's gonna sound like he walks by in one ear and then is in the other ear. I don't know.
Yes, precisely. Very well put. Exactly. This is especially noticeable when we're working in headphones and we've got something right on top of our ears. You can feel the movement. If you're interested, dig into something called binaural microphones. And if you're really interested, we talk about it in 487. Dig into a play called The Encounter and its usage of binaural microphones. I think I have stuff on titanium. If not, I'll put it up. It's freaking amazing. Literally the most profound sound design on stage I've seen in my life. When we've got panning information or left-right information, it's about where we're going and what data from each track is going to each ear or each output. Now that's a really long way of saying this ties into what we're doing with our cross points. Those of you who have done work as electricians, think of this kind of as a channel to dimmer hookup. And then don't tell Lois I'm probably badly misusing her phraseology. So a cross point is saying send this to there. When we set up our cross points in a show, we're saying here's how much I want of my left track versus here's how much I want of my right track going to each output. So you can see here, I've got two sets of zeros. Now these zeros, do you remember way back when we were learning consoles, we talked about panning, and a hard pan means you're all the way to the left or right, and we do it on a scale of 100. If something's at 100, it's all the way panned left or right. If something's at 0, it's center. Remember that? Yeah, okay. So think of it this way. If we're sending 0, we're all in. So what this means is track 1, which is where left would go in my commercial audio, I'm cross-pointing it to output 1. This is basically saying I want my left information to go left. Cross-point 2, I want my right information to go right. And I will give you an example of this. So this will actually be kind of interesting because some of you are wearing headphones and some of you are not. So how you perceive this might be different. I'm going to go ahead and start this track, and I want you to pay attention to what you hear in each ear, okay? Great. This is a great song. It's hard to talk over. So check this out. I am going to switch our cross points. So all I'm doing is clicking and deleting or adding. So anytime you see a numeric box, fades, that visible channel box, anything, it's usually a black box on a gray background. You can click that and enter information the same exact way you would anything else. Okay. Don't show me up, QLab. Okay. Now we're going to do the same exact thing. Pay attention to what ear is what. I think it's a Zoom output. I think my sourcing is swapping. I have the stereo sends. I'm realizing it's not sending out correctly post Zoom. I do apologize. Long and short of this is, if you don't have any cross points here, you're not sending anywhere. So what I've just done down here is deleted my cross points. And if I click, the cue is going to play, right? I see it playing up here. I know it's going, but I don't have any audio sending. And QLab is trying to help me. It's not giving me a red X because technically nothing's broken. It's all working. I'm just kind of using it badly. But check out what's happened with my faders up here. They're grayed out, right? So we know definitely in QLab, but kind of any software, certainly any theater usability software, when something gets grayed out, we all know that feeling. It's like, oh, you can't touch that, sorry. No matter what I do with this fader, it won't even let me click and drag. I need to add some cross points. As soon as I do, there's my audio. Do an entire day on cross points, and I'm not going to because it's not a lesson that travels really well, I'm going to be honest, but also we're dealing with minutia here. You know, TLDR, you need cross points for your audio to get out. Remember how we talked about in consoles and I said think about water flowing through? You know, it has to come in the top, it has to go through, it has to get out. The physical, there's no physical anything to sort of visualize that with, but it still has to make it through. If you stop your signal at any point within your programming, it's not going to make it out. You need cross points to get that through. So when you're adding your cross points, it's going, you're assigning left is left, right is right, you're getting your audio out. Now, occasionally you will run into a mono file, probably a sound effect, possibly old music, and I'm pretty sure I put some mono files in here. Oh, GarageBand sample files. Where's the mono? Are you mono? No. I know I had some of them in here. All right, I can't find a mono file for you. This is because I try not to use them. I prefer to work in stereo, but I'm going on too much about this. You need cross points to get it out. If you occasionally have a mono file, and we've talked about like dumb, easy mistakes we make in tech. This is one I do a lot. If I'm working quickly and I'm swapping out my media, I will sometimes grab a file, and when you bring in a mono file, sometimes you're not going to hear it. If I've got a mono file, essentially, all I've got is one. If I drag it in, QLab assumes I'm dragging stereo files in. So it's going to default my cross points and my fader settings as if it were stereo. However, if I'm only working in mono, if I only have half of that information, all I've got is here on one. Okay, so I've got a fader, I've got a cross point. Do I ever cross point two? No. So occasionally, and like for me, it's thunderclaps and train sounds. I have a bunch of those in mono. I don't know why. If I play something and it's not playing it, and before I look to see, hey, what in my system is broken, I'll check my programming. With a mono file, you do this. You put your cross points for your left and right in a file. So now if, oops, wrong audio file, but I'll play this for you anyway.
Output.
You got to put it to
Oh, thank you. Okay, so let's trim this sucker. So you're gonna get it, but you're probably only getting it in one ear, right? Okay, so when you're working with mono files, you just need to be careful of your cross points. If you're not hearing something, like that's your giveaway. If you play it and you just don't hear it at all, but it's still scrolling through in your active cues, check your cross points, check your outputs. Anyone have questions on that? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete those two. We're gonna talk about a couple of other cool things that we haven't talked about yet. So for our audio cues, we've pretty much seen most of what the inspector has to offer. And we talked about how newer builds of QLab were way more versatile and usable than old ones. I'm going to show you another new thing that came around. This came around with QLab 3, and when it happened, I know it looks so simple right now. When this happened, we rejoiced. This was like 10 years ago when we got this particular update. So here's my time and loops tab in the inspector. This, this is pretty normal. We've worked with this a lot. Way over here on the upper rightmost corner, you've got a little box called Use Integrated Fade. If you click this box, you get a yellow line. Okay, yellow line, not terribly interesting so far. This yellow line represents the overall volume of your cue. For those of you that have worked in GarageBand or Logic, this is very similar to or similar looking to that. It works in a totally different way. For those of you that dug into Pro Tools, we had to end our lab classes before we got there. If those of you who have worked in automation and Pro Tools, same thing, similar concept. So all this means is 0 dB at time, right? As I move my mouse over this little yellow bar, you can see that, okay, 0 dB the whole time. If I were to play this cue right now, and I'm going to make sure it's going to the right output, it is neat. If I were to play this cue right now, nothing would sound different. We're working at 0 dB. Another way to say that is unity. Nothing added, nothing removed. It's going to sound the same. This yellow line, as soon as I start moving it, now affects volume. So you'll notice down here, it says -7 dB. It moves on a curve, so you need to move these points or nodes anytime you want to change this. So what I've now done is brought the whole cue down by 7 decibels. Now, this isn't really efficient. That's not a great way to do it, right? I can use my audio level tab and have a much more precise way of doing it. So why do I want to work with this yellow line? Well, the yellow line can do some tricks that my other tabs can't. So every time I click on this yellow line, I'm going to go ahead and I was just hitting delete a bunch of times there. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can actually hear and see the difference in what I'm doing. Sorry, this part is hidden behind my monitor. Come on. Okay, so we are looking right around here, first 10 seconds or so of audio. Let's just play it for reference. Familiar with this? Now, I'm going to go ahead and do something that I might do regularly. I'm going to click this yellow dot at the very beginning and drag it all the way to the ground. Let's listen. Okay, what I have done here is created, I made too big an example. I'm going to click us ahead a tiny bit. You starting to get it? Okay, so this was, so as we move across this, the time and the yellow line, as my yellow line goes up, I've essentially created a fade in. Again, this is not terribly practical, right? I would generally use a fade cue and my audio tabs to do something way more nuanced here. Okay, but let's take a look at some extremes of what this can do. What I'm doing is clicking on this yellow bar, and every time I click, I'm going to get a new node, which is what I call these little yellow dots. All right, anyone want to hazard a guess as to what this will sound like?
Volume up and down.
Yeah, okay, let's take a listen. Okay, so we've talked about how being a designer is making choices. That's a choice. Again, Would I necessarily use this as that? No, right? I have to be doing something very, very specific. I don't teach the yellow bar until late in QLab on purpose. It's because I found that a lot of students were using this integrated fade, and that's what it's called, the integrated fade. A lot of students were using it where they should be using these regular old fade cues. A fade cue is going to give you a lot more control. It's going to be a lot more precise. You can also trigger fades via pre and post wait. You can roll them into sequences. So they're very useful, and they are my preferred way to work. But occasionally, these get really handy. So I'm gonna go back up to this thunderclap. And you know how I talked about in Thunder before, like here's a really common transition gesture I make. Thunderclaps are where I use my integrated fades. So I'm gonna go ahead and check this level, okay? Make sure I'm not blowing you away when I play this. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this audio. Okay, right? I see this stage picture, right? You know, lights come up with a crack of that, or maybe it's a blackout on stage, or, you know, blackout to the set. But it's sharp. It's how we go into something. It tells a lot of narrative. Maybe I really like the crack of that thunder as a way to bring my audience into the story, but maybe it's a murder mystery where the exposition is super important, and the second the lights come up, we're in the scene and we really need to hear and focus on everything the cast is saying. Something I might do is apply an integrated fade, and I might do something like this. I'm going to put a node right here where I want my crack to stay, and then I'm going to go ahead and considerably lower the rest of the audio. If I were to just play a really sharp thunder crack and then fade it instantly, as an audience member, it might take you out of the story a little bit. That's not what things sound like in nature. So hopefully the play is interesting enough that you're not like, gee, that thunder sounded off. But I mean, if you are, it's probably, we have issues anyway. But somewhere subconsciously, as you're watching this play, your brain might say, hey, that sounds really fake and I don't believe this. And like, if you go to a murder mystery, did someone actually get murdered on stage? No, right? We're pretending. It's the suspension of willing suspension of disbelief. I can see where the set ends and the ceiling begins. I can see the lighting instruments in the air. I can see the speakers. We know it's fake, but we still want to put our audience into that world of believability. We want them to come on this narrative, empathy-based journey with us and with the cast. Something I might do to make a more subtle gesture in that direction is bring in my thunder crack nice and sharp, and then use this integrated fade to drop it out and to compare these two. So take a look at what I'm doing right here. You can guess what it sounds like. I'm going to get rid of the integrated fade for a sec and play it one more time. Okay, there's your reference. Now, I'm going to put my integrated fade back in, and I'm going to play this cue for you again. See, that was clumsily done. That was me trying to demonstrate for class really well. But you could hear how there was an immediate dropout. Maybe I would do something more like this. Right, where I need to pull back, I need to be subtle. Frankly, I don't like how this sounds. That wouldn't fly in a show I was designing most likely, but it was here for you to demonstrate with. Do feel free to play around with the integrated fade. Again, I teach this near the end for a reason. In the same way that I was telling you with these audio effects that I don't want you to use, which if you do go ahead and get that free pro license till June 1st, you can use them. They're there. I don't think they are the best tool for the job 9 times out of 10. That is how I feel about an integrated fade. It's there. Use it when you need it. I wouldn't say 9 times out of 10. 7 times out of 10, I feel like it's not the best tool for the job. You want to be specific in how you use it. It's there for you. Questions on the integrated fade? Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna go back to this audio cue. I'm gonna get rid of the integrated fade. So just as you're aware, when I click this box, it toggles the integrated fade on and off. If I turn it on and then add something and I click it on and off, it'll still be there. If you want, when you first use this, you're gonna make yourself 8,000 tiny little yellow dots, and you're gonna be up against the screen and you're gonna be moving them with tiny, tiny minutia. I have found that this is a great way to start wanting to punch your computer. Work in broader strokes when you're working with the integrated fade, especially if you're zooming in. The fade shapes you'll be finessing might be over the course of 3/4 of a second, and things will be going too fast for it to really hear the detail in that. Most of the time, I find myself painting myself into a corner. If my integrated fade is a woggly, weird mess of yellow lines and there's dots everywhere, I, as a designer, realize, hey, I'm probably not approaching this correctly. Once in a blue moon, yeah, it is the right tool, and it's a great tool, but use it judiciously. 9 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, however you want to do the math, this fade cue is going to be a better choice. Okay. So it hides, if you want to get rid of these yellow dots, so I just made 3. When I make a dot, it turns into a black circle outlined in yellow. The current one you're working with is bright yellow. If I want to get rid of the current one or change the one I'm working on, you can click it and I just hit delete. It'll go to the next closest one, so you can hit delete, 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 delete. Maybe not. Delete, delete, delete. Okay, and you get rid of it. Again, if you've got 1,000 nodes on that integrated fade, reevaluate what you're doing. No questions? Yeah, there were questions. Cool. All right, so some other things. About 15 minutes to do this one. Okay, something else I want to show you today is something that comes with our pro license. How do I bring this up? Let's do something together. So I am going to, oh gosh, okay. FYI, how you see me scrolling through this right now is because I am using what's called a magic mouse. So this mouse functions as a trackpad. When you are programming a lot, you are going to get really, really particular, not only in terms of how you program, but the tools you're going to use. Hugely polarizing amongst designers. A lot of designers I know will only program on what sometimes is called a MIDI mouse, or it's like an oversized one where the click button is elsewhere. I know a guy that programs on a joystick because honestly he could. A lot of people prefer trackpad. I personally, when I am working in QLab, either prefer, hopefully you can see this, this is the trackpad that came with my laptop. I like that. I like this style of mouse because it functions as a trackpad. When I am working with a 2-button mouse, I make myself nuts. I would actually prefer to just work at a laptop. When I'm really going, I actually don't touch my mouse very much. It's entirely keyboard shortcuts. That's another class, and that's many, many years of experience. So be aware that not only you want to get used to not only what's happening up here on the screen, your software, but there is some hardware interface that will make you make choices here. And the reason I brought this up is because I'm scrolling left to right this way in my queue. And if I do it up top versus this way, so this is me going up and down on my mouse. This is me going left to right on my mouse. And you can't do that with a regular mouse. This zoom in and out is like worth the price of this mouse alone, honestly. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom way in, too far. Yeah, too far. So I've got my eye on this intro. Let's play it. Okay, we're going to be working with that. I would like to add a slice right. Let's try here. I'm going to click where I want it. I'm going to click add slice. You can also, there are keyboard shortcuts for that. I tend to click it. And I'm going to double click this number and hit spacebar enter. So right now we are playing this infinitely, right? So if I start playing with this. Oh, so close. Hang on, I actually cannot demonstrate with this. Oh, okay. So we see the problem. It wasn't looping cleanly because I had this teeny bit of open air prior to my track. I was just saying nice things about you, mouse. Don't do this to me. Okay, so if I play this. Okay, I buy that. If I were in tech, I would have spent another 5 minutes on that, FYI, but we're learning, so we're not gonna do that. Okay, let's talk transition between scenes, because as sound designers, you're gonna be filling those up a lot. We talked about last class, let's say this, I don't know why I keep thinking of importance of being earnest. Jim Tully says this transition is one chair. Someone comes out and moves a chair. We can do it in 4.8 seconds, no worries. Okay, now it's 3 chairs, but they're gonna be fast. It's 3 chairs, but it's fast, don't worry about it. We're adding a tea trolley. Okay, we still gonna get this done in 4.8 seconds? Probably not, right? If I've got a tea trolley and props that are made of breakable china on stage, no, I don't want my cast racing through the dark, holding my fragile things that could shatter in a blackout, right? That's not how we want to do it. And we don't want our actors hung up on, well, the sound designer said, you know, I only have 5 seconds in this music before I have to go, and so I have to do my job in 5 seconds. Like, right? That is getting the actors in their head. We're not helping them. We're not letting them do their job. What we can do to support a situation like that is loop this audio. We talked about this already in the last class. Now, let's say I want this particular audio to loop until the transition's over. This is something we do all the time. We loop it, we loop it, we loop it. And then sort of a clunky response is we fade. We fade it out after the scene is done, the lights are up. And when I say clunky, I'm only talking clunky in this particular regard. It is an imaginary show. I'm not casting aspersions on people's styles and methodology of how they work. So let's look at 2 ways to make this happen. Here's one way. A little clunky, but it's totally gonna work, right? So I play this. That sounded rough because I was starting halfway through. There we go. So, and I've changed my scene. Okay. Totally functional, right? I'd finesse the fade times, I'd finesse the curve shapes, all that stuff, but it works. Let's say we want to get a little more slick with it. Instead of a fade, we're going to talk about the devamp. I love this tool. Okay, so devamp, I'm not going to explain it to you, I'm going to show it to you. You're going to notice I've dragged it on, and devamp hides, it's kind of down here. I don't give it a number shortcut because honestly I don't work with it enough to do that. But you just devamp, click and drag. You'll notice it's giving me a red X. It says no target cue. This is exactly what would happen if I had a fade cue that wasn't assigned. So what I can do is click and drag the audio. I've now applied my devamp cue. So the audio, it knows what to do to what audio file. Devamp means break out of your slice. So let me just demonstrate this for you. So we're looping, we're looping, we're looping. Now, I didn't preface this enough. Anyone can go out, anyone can fade something at any time, right? When we're working with a devamp, we're working musically. We're working in beats. What we are saying is, I want you to keep playing this until it's done. I don't want you to get choppy and jump around. I want this to function as a loop and then go on. So I phrased that badly. Let me demonstrate. So looping like always. Okay.
It broke out of the loop and then started going, continuing.
Exactly. So it broke out of its loop. It broke out of its slice. When we're saying devamp, what we're saying is you can have an infinitely looping slice, or I always set it to infinity just for safety's sake. But in really big detailed things, you could have like 3 of one loop and then 6 of one loop and then 8 of another loop. It can get complex. This is a situation where it's sort of, if you remember logic from high school, it's a predicated statement. It's a if-then statement. You're saying, basically how I would tell my stage manager and my board op to take this is, do the transition, let it take as long as you need it. When you are clear, you can take the go on the devamp, and it would be its own cue, right? I'd call it 3, and I guess I have a 3 in here already. I'd call it 7. JK, it would be in a group. It would be a lot neater, but we're working quickly. You can give your stage manager this cue, and the stage manager wouldn't have to worry about calling this perfectly in time. And your SM can do this. And I've had SMs do this back before this existed, right? We would say things like, okay, on the third, call this, or on that. This lets us get more detailed. And it gives ease to your stage manager and to your board op. You don't have to time everything perfectly. We're very attuned to music as a species, right? We can hear when rhythm is very, very slightly off, and it'll throw us. It's the same thing as the stuff we were talking about before. It's that willing suspension of disbelief. We don't want to throw off our audiences. We want them to be with us. And this lets us musically loop and then break out of that loop. Does that make sense? One of the reasons I particularly wanted to show you this, and this is something I wouldn't ask you to do within the actual class project because it requires a pro license. I keep talking about you can edit, you can do a lot in QLab, but eventually if you get really detailed, you're gonna wanna go back to Pro Tools. You're gonna wanna go back to Logic or GarageBand. This is where we start seeing stuff we can't do in Pro Tools. This is where QLab is kind of the only solution, because Pro Tools doesn't know that a cast member has tripped on his way off stage. Pro Tools won't know that someone knocked over their tea trolley and, by the way, our 10-second transition is now 45 seconds in the dark while we clean this up as fast as we can. This is a way of adding versatility into your design. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions on that or thoughts? Okay, so the last thing we're gonna look at today is how we save and send our QLab files. And I know this sounds a little bit boring, right? But it's pretty important. When I am hired on a show, by first rehearsal, hopefully, I've had at least one or hopefully a few more meetings with my director. And I'm starting to develop things. I'm going to start sending things back and forth. Ideally, I'd love to be in the rehearsal room. Actually, ideally, you could be in the rehearsal room every day. Personally, I don't like being in the rehearsal room every day. I like being at some rehearsals, not others. Other sound designers will go head to head with me on this. It's kind of the school you were raised in. Like if you came out of the Yale program, you want to be at every rehearsal always, and you're a failure if you didn't. If I came out of a style of design where you're working a little more offline and you're in and out of rehearsal, again, there's no hard and fast rule. It depends on you. It depends on the director. Try to be in rehearsal. You can't be in rehearsal. As a professional sound designer, I am here to tell you, there are very, very few theaters in the area that pay a living wage to do one show at a time. When I am in rehearsal for 2 or 3 shows, I'm in tech for another 2, and I'm in pre-production for another. I simply do not have enough time to be at every rehearsal. So how can I be there when I am physically not? Recording, Zoom, Skype is all great, but I send my QLab files back and forth. I send them usually to the stage manager or ASM, or I'll Dropbox them, is getting pretty common. Sometimes I'll send stuff to my director if they are technically savvy. This is not, you would think this would kind of be an age-based thing, that the younger you are, the more adept you are. And to some extent, it definitely is. But I am surprised at how many people are my age that literally do not know how to open an MP3 and an audio file. That's fine. I'm here to help you. Like, I've put CDs in the mail for people my own age, believe it or not. Totally fine, right? My job is here to get you this information. However it's going to do it works. This is the best one. So you will notice, here, oh wait, you can't, I have to change my screen share, hang on. So I am now going to screen share. Is there anything here that shouldn't be? No, okay. You're gonna see my whole second monitor now. Okay, so you should see this Finder window, right? Over here in week 13 is where I initially saved this QLab file. Sorry, I can't see it because the Zoom window is on top of it. So, and I can even see it says class demo 414 top of day. I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new file. So what I'm actually going to do is file, save as, and then I'm going to put it in the same place. This is what I do when I'm in tech every day. So I save a new version of my show every single night before I leave. I save it to my computer, and I also save a copy to a flash drive that I take home with me, because you really don't want to go through a week of tech and then be like, hey, your computer exploded. You have a backup, right? You want a backup. I've never actually had a computer explode. I've had a theater catch fire. Thankfully, everyone was okay, but it didn't destroy the computer, but we couldn't touch anything in there for a while. So thankfully I had a backup. Anyway, what I'm going to call this is, so here, class demo would kind of be the name of the show. Class demo 4/30/20. Sometimes I put top of day, end of day if I'm at a 10 out of 12 or a really long tech rehearsal where I'm making huge like if I'm making huge changes to my show, I'll probably save every hour or two, honestly. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and take a look at this Finder window while I save. Okay, so we can see both versions of my show saved in here. Here's the most recent one. This is only 393 kilobytes. Any single piece of audio, so here's what we were just looking at, it's 5.9 megabytes. We're dealing with something approximately 300% larger. So we talked about earlier, QLab is the stage. I'm mixing my metaphors, but I stand by it. QLab is kind of like a stage manager. Okay, you here, go here. You there, please. Okay, go. Great, thanks, right? The QLab file itself, whoops, what I'm looking at right here, this doesn't hold on to my audio. It just says where to go get it. And you can see that in your basics tab, right? So there's the whole string of where this gets stored. And when I hit go on that cue, the stage manager, QLab, is saying, okay, sound cue, let's give it a name. Sound cue A, stand by, therefore this file, week 13, audio for QLab, run, stand by to go to QLab and go. This is happening faster than we can comprehend because we're not computers, but that's the process. When I save my QLab file, I'm only saving the stage manager. I'm only saving the directions or the recipe. mixing my metaphors, I gotta stop. I need to save the audio as well if I'm going to send this anywhere. So if we go back to here, you can look. Just gonna move your chat. Give me a holler if you're on the chat because I put it at the bottom of my screen. Now, here, it's a single audio file. Again, just QLab, or I shouldn't have used audio, sorry. It's a single file, just QLab, none of the related audio. So how do I send my audio to someone? How do I save my audio? When I leave at the end of the day, you know I'm a huge control freak. I'm not just gonna leave my random audio files hanging. I want to encapsulate them all. This is what we're gonna do in making a bundle. Okay, so up here, file, this should look familiar to you. If any software has, you know, your basic save as kind of stuff. What we have options, so I can save, and saving is something we want to do all the time. Command S, just do it. I literally do it without thinking when I'm programming. Save as, if I want to change the name, right? Make sure you save today's show with today's date, not overwrite yesterday's, because if you have to go back, it's a pain in the butt. I've done that a lot. Down here, bundle workspace. That's what we're going to talk about. So if I click bundle workspace, it's going to give me the same exact window that I would have for a save as or a save, right? It's saying, where do you want to store it? What do you want to call it? I want to call it exactly the same thing I saved my show as. I'm going to click save, and what you're going to see maybe is, all right, it was fast, but did you see that little sort of scroll bar that said bundling? And then it opened up a new version. When you bundle, it opens up a new version of your show. I'm just gonna click and close it again, doesn't matter. But check out what I have in Finder now. So here were my original 3 things. Audio for QLab, that was just a folder. Here were my show files, right? This was just my QLab files. When I bundled, I made this. It's a folder with the same name as my show. And in the folder, same exact QLab file that I've got over here. But what I also have is an audio folder with every single piece of audio that I've got going in my workspace. If I were to click and if I were to drag this folder onto a flash drive or a hard drive, or it's too big to email, or a Dropbox, I have the entire show there. And I'm going to break something to show you this example. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna save this, take a look at what this looked like. Now I'm gonna quit. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and all of my audio that I worked with was in this audio for QLab folder. I'm gonna delete it. What do you think would happen if I tried to open this folder, this QLab workspace?
Red X's?
Red, oh my gosh, it outsmarted me. Okay. Where, it found it in the trash. Okay, stand by. So new builds of QLab are actually getting smarter.
Rifle through your recycle bin.
It did. Okay, so I'm just gonna move it instead. This is actually a more accurate depiction of a stupid mistake I make. I can be working quickly and thinking all sorts of dumb things and like making dumb mistakes in tech. We all do it. It's extremely unlikely that I'm going to delete my entire audio file folder for the entire show. That's up there with like, I don't know, kicking my computer over. It is very unlikely. Something I might do is move it by accident. So I'm gonna grab all of my audio and just put it in a different spot. Let's see if we can break the show this way. Oh, come on, man. So this is a newish trick that QLab has learned. It came around to build 4. Oh, I can't break it. Okay. You know what? Fine. Stand by. You want to play dirty? I'll play dirty. Find it now. I hope I didn't need anything in there. Okay. Everything I had in there as my audio were copies. I would never cavalierly delete original files like that. I'm in fact a little paranoid that I just trashed something I need. Whatever, it's fine. All right, hey, red X's. So this is what you get if you just email an audio, a QLab file to someone. They're going to see a bunch of red X's. You'll notice in my basics tab where it normally says, hey, here's where it's stored. It's yellow, meaning like, I know you wanted me to find it, but I can't find it. So all of this stuff, if I try to take the cue, oh, it's running its post wait. That's kind of funny. But right, it won't play the audio. It's not there. Now, let's go ahead. I'm gonna quit this build. So that was here. If I go into my bundle and I open it up again, I have a functioning show. So when we're bundling, what we're doing is we're saving absolutely everything and putting it into one folder. Do not be tempted to break this stuff up. Keep everything in the folder it was bundled in. It's how QLab knows to find the audio cues. FYI, this would go with light cues, projections or video cues, whatever you put in here, any original content will get stored in a bundle. So in theory, if I put a video cue in there, I'd get a second folder in here labeled video. Stage managers in particular, this is something that get comfortable with. This is something you're going to be doing a lot, right? I routinely at this point will Dropbox stuff back and forth to my stage manager via QLab. I think I talked when we were working in paperwork, I talked about a production of Good People I did where they were playing bingo in the bingo hall every day, and it was a million billion cues, and I kept getting these tiny edits that I had to go back and forth on. The show was in Coachella Valley, and I was in New York at the time. So obviously I was not driving out with new files every day. And frankly, I would not drive to Indio from LA either. What I was doing was sending new QLab files twice a day. I think in that particular instance, the house audio engineer was grabbing them for me and putting them into the show. Again, that's an extreme example. When you're in tech, you want to be there doing your own stuff. If you're in pre-production, right? If you're still working with your director on ideas and you're not sure about it, you're still playing with stuff before the rehearsal process has started, or you're in the rehearsal process, right? You got a note in the report, or the director called you and said, hey, I'm thinking of underscoring blank with this kind of thing. You could say, here's 3 ideas I have. Right? This is a great way to communicate and send your work back and forth. Any questions on bundling? Okay, so this is actually going to be finishing up our work with QLab. I'm actually we only cut about 2 lessons off of it. So yes, you weren't doing hands-on work with it, but you were seeing most of the functionality that we worked with in class. Okay, so for our next 2 lessons, what we are going to do, oh wait, it's not letting me drag it. Okay, I was trying to drag it to the window you can see, but don't worry about it. So our next 2 lessons, what we're going to be doing is on Tuesday, it's a lesson I call Pro Jobs in Audio, meaning what are different roles and how do we fulfill them? Also key moments in the process. I've never had this in my class before, but I had a conversation with Lois fairly recently, and she had said a student didn't know, I think, what a Q to Q was. And it made me realize that I wasn't covering some sort of basic stuff that I took for granted that you were coming into class with. A lot of you are going to know some of these things. So this will be new to some of you. So that's what we're going to be doing next Tuesday. Next Thursday, it's a lesson I call Why Do We Make Art? But also I'm going to turn over 30 to 45 minutes of the last class to something I'm calling Sound Design AMA. So I'm a professional sound designer, ask me anything. So think of some questions. I'm actually considering, because you are a quiet class, and also just because it's interesting and I've never done it before, I'm considering inviting my advanced and grad seminars into the Zoom for that part of class. So next Thursday at about half hour into class, we're going to have some visitors. So please make our guests feel welcome. Think of some questions too. it's AMA, so you can ask me anything. I might, depending on what you answer, I might not, depending on what you ask, I might not answer it in terms of personal stuff, but you genuinely can ask me whatever questions you have. Questions or thoughts on this? All right. Wow, today just flew by. I love talking about integrated fades. Okay. Be well, everyone. Have a good weekend. I know that I know weekends don't exist anymore. It's a thing from the before, but do take care of yourselves. We're coming into the last week. I have deliberately tried to make my classes just chill out a tiny bit, take a breath, like not in terms of personal, but in terms of how we're learning it. I get that you have projects coming from everywhere. I get that you have due dates coming from everywhere and finals. We're not doing a final. I want you to breathe easy on this class. And I'm not being flippant about your grades. What I am saying here is right now, the information you're getting from these lessons is more important than the numeric feedback you would have gotten from a final or one more project. It's all about what are you learning? It's not about memorize this stuff and then forget it again. So I don't want, if you're stressing about your schoolwork in general, I understand. I don't want that class to be part of it. If you want to contact me personally, either through office hours or email, please feel free to do so. You know, I'm having a problem with blank. Please do it. This class, I want you to learn. I want you to enjoy the learning, but it is not worth panicking yourselves over, please. Okay, so please be well. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of your people. And I will see you all on Tuesday. All right, bye everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions before I end the meeting? No? Oh, I think AJ's screen is frozen. That's it. Okay. Bye, AJ. Bye, Teresa. Bye, Jade.